I've had people come up to me and ask me, how did you do it? And I'm like, well, I'm not sure how I did it, but I know that you don't want to replicate how I did it. You don't want to get to your damn near 60 years old and finally be able to pay your rent. This is not the way to do it. You know what I mean? This is not. Therein lies madness. But I think in this discomfort that you're feeling, it's just like, yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's very, there's no way around that. It just is what it is. That's just the physics of the situation. So you just have to live with it. This guy told me one time when I was in school, and this is both affirming what you're saying, but kind of countering it, or maybe another way to think about it. He was showing a film. He was from Angola, actually. I went to the Howard University in the States, and I got into a conversation with him, and I was telling him just how uncomfortable I was feeling. I was feeling not at ease. And I said, yeah, and sometimes my friends say when I'm looking at them, they feel like I'm just looking at them like they're bugs, which made me very uncomfortable because I kind of recognized what they were saying on one level. I was looking at them like they were bugs, but I said, but I'm really uncomfortable with this sense of alienation I'm feeling from my community or the people I love or I identify with. I grew up, like I said, in Mississippi, so I had a very charged relationship with the context. Mississippi, outside of the Appalachians, is the poorest region in America. So I grew up in a very poor region, but then my parents were teachers. So I was already, there was a kind of tension there. I was born in Tupelo, Mississippi, but grew up in Clarksdale, Mississippi, meaning like Tupelo was the model post-integration southern city, and Clarksdale was not. Clarksdale was segregated, unrepentantly segregated, and segregated now. Even though by law it's not segregated, but in every other purpose it's still segregated. But I used to go back and forth between there on a weekly basis. So it was a 2-hour drive away. I'm not really sure exactly why my parents moved us from Tupelo to Clarksdale. They took up a teaching position at a small black college that was outside of Clarksdale. And I think they got caught up in, they had this pretty visionary president of this college. My parents, they were a certain generation, they got caught up in this whole idea of education. So they moved us down to Clarksdale. It's like taking your kids to, I don't know, whatever abject space you would say. With missionaries. It was kind of a missionary thing, I think, a little bit. Even though, in fact, they were black, we were black, and the context was black. So we ended up in Clarksdale, but every, like Friday after we finished school, like within an hour, we were on the road to Tupelo. So it made me very self-conscious in both environments because none of the environments got normalized for me. So when I was in Tupelo, I was very conscious of my cousins. I was like, they got a fantasy view of the world. This is not the world. It's not the real world. But when I went back to Clarksdale, I was like, you think this is the real world? That everything is segregated and split like this, you know? And it was the back and forth. So I always had this sense of alienation, let's say, a difference, standing out. At the same time, I had this longing to be oblivious to that and to just feel like I just belonged in whatever community, you know, around the people I grew up around. So I'm at Howard. This guy shows his film. We start talking. I say, look, I feel alienated. He said, you know what a griot is? And I said, yeah, I know what a griot is. People know what a griot is. A griot is basically an African oral historian, storyteller, but they tend to supposedly, they're the historians, but it's oral. They hold the tradition in their head. I said, yeah, I know what a griot is. He said, but do you know where griots come from? I mean, and I was like, yeah, Africa. He's like, no, do you know what engendered griot? I said, no, I don't know. He said, let me tell you how it goes. He said, it goes like this. There were two brothers who were on some long epic quest. And they went away from their community and they went out in the world. They had all these adventures and whatnot. And at some point, the cycle was finishing itself. You know, they were actually making their way back to the village that they grew up in, their natal context. They had incredible adventures. They learned things, grown, all this kind of stuff. But it had taken its toll. They were very weak, and they were going to barely make it home. And one of the brothers realized that he was so weak he wasn't going to make it home. He was just not. He didn't have enough strength to make it home. But he didn't want to endanger his brother. So he said to his brother, look, I just need to take a break here. You keep going. I'm going to take a little nap, and I'll catch up with you in a little bit. His brother said, okay, cool. I'll see you in a little bit. I'm going to keep going. And he basically laid down on the road to die. He was like, I'm just going to lay here and die. After a few minutes, the brother that had walked with said, it's taking him a long time to catch up with me. I'm going to go back and see if there's a problem. So he goes back. He sees his brother lying on the side of the road, and he realized immediately what's happened. His brother's dying, and rather than in jeopardy, jeopardize his ability to get back, he wanted to just take himself out of the equation. He realizes immediately, so what he does is he takes a knife and he cuts his own calf off. And he makes a fire and he cooks his own calf over this fire. And then he wakes his brother up and says, hey, look, I found some food. You should eat. So he gave the food to his brother. His brother ate it, regained his strength. They stood up. They limped back on home. They made it home. So they get home and people are enthralled to see them. Everybody's cheering. But in that way, in the myth, they almost also immediately, they see the brother's leg is bleeding and they understand immediately what's happened. The brother who had, quote unquote, eaten his own brother's flesh looks down, sees his brother's leg. He realizes what's happened. I've actually consumed my brother's flesh. So what he says is, okay, from this point onwards, me and my sons and their daughters are going to sing the praises of you and your sons and their daughters. And their sons and their daughters are going to sing the praises of their sons. He says, so this is where the first griot came from, the impulse to do praise songs, to sing songs about the history of the other person, right? He said, now the thing about it is griots have a very complicated relationship in traditional societies. He said, on one hand, they're honored because they retain the history of the community and stuff. But on the other hand, when they die, they don't even bury them with everybody else. They put their bodies in trees and let the maggots eat them, right? And he said the reason this happens is because griots feed on the flesh of the people. It's necessary. Somebody has to do it because somebody has to retain the history. But that function of feeding on the flesh of the people makes people feel wary around you. Even though you're doing your, quote unquote, your job, it makes people feel wary around you. So what he said to me was that, he said, you got a griot impulse in you. People are going to always feel uncomfortable around you. Even the people who love you are going to feel uncomfortable around you. Live with it. He said, you just have to live with it, So to a certain degree, I would just say, in the same way, this discomfort that you're feeling around your positionality or your saying people are angry and this and that, you just got to live with it. You just have to live with it and just try to move towards, well, first of all, you're trying to understand the landscape because it's complicated and it's shifting all the time. But you just have to get right with the discomfort because it is going to be uncomfortable. It's like you're in the ocean, you're going to get wet. There's no way around that. You're going to get wet. Practice. If you need a butterfly stroke or a backstroke or whatever, practice what kind of strokes you use, but you're going to get wet. You got to accept that. So I don't know if that's helpful.